Hello, everyone. It is Felicia Bender, the practical numerologist. Today's video, we are covering the number 7 pinnacle. So I'm making a wild and crass assumption that if you are watching, if you've clicked on this video, that you know all about your pinnacle cycles. This is numerologically speaking, and specifically in Pythagorean numerology. So the pinnacle cycles, and you know the timing of yours, and you know what they are. So if not, I would ask you to please pause this video, take a look at the description box below. There'll be a link there for firstly, a video that will describe basically what pinnacles are and how to understand them and what benefit you could have by knowing them, which is the point of it all, right? Why does this matter to me? Well, let me tell you. So I'll talk about what the pinnacles are, and then go over the calculation for the pinnacle cycles, okay, and the timing for those. So there is no hard math in numerology, and yet there is some math that's a little bit more complicated, or just takes a little bit of concentration and sitting down with your pen and your paper and going over it and going over it a couple times so that you know that you have made the right calculations. All right. So I would ask you to do that first, and then come on back and see if this is the video that you need to be watching. So if you know already that you are either in a 7 pinnacle, have been in a 7 pinnacle, or are heading toward a 7 pinnacle, then this video is for you. So let's get right into it. So the 7 pinnacle, it is all about spiritual development and specialization. So, the 7 in numerology, whenever it shows up, whether it shows up as one of your core numbers, as the one of the areas of your personality, of your characteristics, of your values, all the ways that you are as a person, and it can show up similarly when it shows up as a cycle of time that you show up in. It has those same characteristics. I'm always teaching, needless to say, that when we can kind of, I don't know, get in our memory bank what each number 1 through 9 represents, what those defining qualities are, we can begin to plug it in whenever it shows up. So with that, if you are experiencing a number 7 pinnacle, it's going to be really pointed toward spiritual development and specialization during that period of time. So that's going to be your environment. That's going to give some meaning around what happens in your life and doesn't happen, what people show up, what opportunities, what challenges might come into play, and we can all point to understanding and deriving the meaning out of it by looking at these key themes and what you're learning during this period of time. So, if you do know all about your pinnacles, you will at least, I'm sure, understand that there are 4 pinnacle cycles that you go through, and 1 through 4. So the first pinnacle cycle and the 4th pinnacle cycle are the longest periods of time that you experience this. Of course, depending on how long we live. So that first pinnacle is going to be approximately 30 years, okay, give or take. And that's where doing your math, doing your calculation shows up to figure out exactly when yours shows up. But just as a brushstroke, this first pinnacle is around 30 years, from birth to 30, and it is a time of attainment. And I take that term from master numerologist Hans Dekos. He calls the first pinnacle the time of attainment. Did I say attunement? I think I said attainment. I hope I did. So anyway, this that first period, I find it's also very much a time that it is very formative. It's a very formative time um, in terms of overall. Obviously, it's from when we're born until we're 30. That's a long period of time, right? We experience a lot of stuff during those first 30 years. And I also like to really think about it in terms of, if we look at the current science and the current research about those first 4 years of life, really do form our our operating system, our basic programming that one might say we're attempting to deprogram for the rest of our lives, right? And yet, those really formative years. And if we know our pinnacle, we can also really hone in on what the core factors are that are involved with that, or at least that's what I find with numerology. One of the many reasons I love it. And so let's kind of deconstruct this. Let's talk about it. So if you experience a 7 pinnacle in your first period cycle, this time of attainment, that this is a period of really intense and slow personal and spiritual growth. There's a focus here on building trust within yourself and in the outer world with others. I often find others means also God and the unknown, the unseen, right? Trust overall, trust in the flow. And it's the feeling of being misplaced is often really a cornerstone for this period of time where life's bigger questions knock at your door. So really, it's really a very it's a spiritual growth period. And you could say life is a spiritual growth period. And yet, what I would say, if you have a 7 as your first pinnacle, it often shows up when where there are some things that happen in your life that really, really shake your foundation in terms of your trust, again, in others and yourself. You're always asking those bigger questions. You can be a person who takes refuge in solitude, in study. And you might feel awkward. You might feel like you're a little bit of a wallflower, like you don't quite fit in on planet Earth, right? That you're just really, again, on a different level, different wavelength. You often feel more like you're an observer of life and of your life within that life rather than as a participant in some ways. It can be an incredibly rich period of spiritual growth, whether that is, keying into your intuitive capabilities. Often people find themselves turning to healing modalities. Often that is because during a 7 pinnacle, there's a possibility for maybe a little health blip or something to happen, a crisis in terms of maybe I don't know, the death of a loved one or a betrayal or a divorce or again something with your own health that makes you um, turn toward spiritual practices or alternative means of dealing with things. And like for instance, you I don't know, you have some kind of issue with digestion or something, let's say, and you just know you feel sick after you eat certain things, or you get hives, or something happens, and no, you go to the doctor, they can't figure out what it is. They give you, cream to, cortisone cream. They give you, Pepto-Bismol or some kind of thing to settle your stomach. Nothing works. And it's just a band-aid on the real issue at hand. And then you, after exhausting all of those things, you end up turning to, oh, what about past life regression? What about energy work? What about Reiki? What about herbs and nutrition and finding out about food sensitivities? What about, I mean, all of these things begin to become where you turn because traditional means of solving a problem don't work. During this time, I know I'm going on and on about it, but really, sometimes that can be a real aha moment for people who experience a seven pentacle because they're like, whoa, okay, that explains it because that really was the trajectory of what happened. And often it can be, several years of that searching, that seeking, that figuring it out, that frustration that comes with that. All right. On the other hand here, denying that deeper dive is going to result in feeling lost, feeling frustrated, feeling rudderless during a seven pinnacle. If a person's in a seven pinnacle and they're out getting drunk every night and scrolling through TikTok all the time, right? That's their entire language. Then there's going to be some more dramatic things happening during that pinnacle that's going to push them, nudge them into more of a seeking, more of an exploration of the bigger truths, the bigger questions in life on a spiritual level. It can also be a time where you turn to in college, in school, maybe afterward in your career. You might be someone who really is drawn toward some things that have to do with analysis, with data, with analytics, or psychic phenomena, spirit, something that might be officially spiritual, quote unquote. That's a period of time that can really be conducive for leaning that way in terms of what you are interested in for a career and that sort of thing. So, if you experience a seven pinnacle in your second period cycle, that is the time of obligation, and it is time to refine and specialize your skills, both the intuitive and in the metaphysical world. That's going to keep colliding with that rational, logical aspect of life and demand to be valued and integrated. So, this is a real soul searching period of time as the seven always brings in a bit of introspection, a bit of soul searching, a bit of, kind of just needing that alone time. The seven is a very introverted energy. Often you feel a little bit more introverted, a little lower energy overall in these pinnacles. So you may find yourself maybe even in a teaching role or as an analyst or some other thing like that, or be drawn again into the metaphysical world. Um, so it's funny because I experienced a seven pinnacle myself, and it was a period of time, and I cite this as an example to give you the idea about the layers here, okay, and how we can look at it both like look at it as a single pinnacle, and then we need to look at it really in the broader context of all of your pinnacles. Because the reason I say that is because during my personal seven pinnacle, I was involved in a relationship that was very expansive financially. I partnered with someone who was very financially, taught me a lot of things in terms of financial well being. I was really doing a lot of real estate during that time, buy, sell, investment, all of that. And so on the surface, you could go, well, gosh, what was going on in your seven pinnacle? It should have been an eight pinnacle because it was all about, their influence and the money and the real estate, all of those things. Well, it just so happened that during that time, on top of or underneath or within that seven pinnacle that I was in, I discovered numerology. And that was when, because I've always been interested. Anyone who knows my story knows that I kind of started this exploration pretty early in life, in my early 30s. And and yet I've done different modalities and gone the path that many people do in who are seeking in this way. And yet that was the pinnacle in which I found numerology, and I began to dive into it really, really deeply. It took me a while to become have the expertise. And why I'm saying that is because when you experience a seven pinnacle, you're being drawn toward becoming an expert, really having a deep level of expertise in something, right? Whether it's spiritual or whether it's the system that you work with, your job, or whatever it is. It can be anything. But for me, it was a spiritual modality. And it was a time where I really devoted a good deal of my time, energy, and fascination with numerology. And after that pinnacle was over, is when my career, again, when everything was going in a different direction. Anyway, you don't need to go into all that. But what I do want to say is that it can appear something on the outside, but the nucleus of what's going on the inside is what really matters in terms of this seven pinnacle. You could be a new mother or father. You could be really, all kinds of things can be happening on the surface in a seven pinnacle. And yet when you really dig under the layers, you are going to observe that this was a real deep period of spiritual growth if you embraced it and if you allowed it to be so. Okay, I hope I'm making sense there. So let's move to the third pinnacle cycle. That is the time of foundation. So if you have a seven as your third pinnacle cycle, this period really offers a plethora of opportunities to develop your spiritual nature. It is a time of intense yet slow growth. I have to really, really stress this, that nothing is in a seven cycle, or when the seven is involved in numerology, is jump and jack flash. I mean, it is not fast. It is not sparkly. It is deep and a little more serious. I mean, it's just this very, very deep, profound questioning and research and pondering of the nature of being. Not to put too fine a color on it, right? So the deeper it is, just understand that if it was a real kind of strange period of time for you, or where you didn't always feel super jazzy jazzed, that's really a good example of how it operates. It really is. There's constantly something running in the background, right, about your questioning and pondering life's bigger questions, and not just questions that come with life. So it's I find that people must work very consciously on their communication during this time, and emotional connection. Um, Developing this sense of openness and connecting with emotions, and avoid being critical, help to make this a balanced period and a more successful period all the way around. Because the seven can bring in this detachment that sometimes isn't very conducive for friendships or relationships as a whole. So you have to really keep that in the foreground, that you've got to be very communicative and work on those things more consciously in order to make things work. So if you have a seven pinnacle as your fourth period cycle, it is a time of culmination. And let's remember that your first, second, and third pinnacles are leading you up to this place, to this point, to this crescendo of life, where this fourth and final pinnacle, once again, it's like another lifetime. Um, um, it's going to be at least as long as the first one was, a minimum more than likely of 30 years. And so what are you going to do with it? And it's all about bringing and bridging all of your life experience, everything that you can put into context from your other pinnacles, and that have gotten you ready for this period of time, have schooled you, have prepped you to really shine and to really expand and blossom during this fourth and final period. And in this way, for the seven, it is all about spiritual development and personal growth. These are the key elements to this period. So it's a time where you're really drawn towards study, higher learning, contemplation. It really offers so many rewards. It's a time where you often just want to know more, and then you find yourself uninterested in the more, I don't know, mundane, pragmatic, surfacey ways of existing that maybe were okay in the past. But when you get into that fourth and final seven pinnacle, it's more about the wisdom, those deeper levels of understanding that you want to explore and cultivate and learn about. And this is a time of great wisdom gathering and wisdom giving. So when you're in a seven pinnacle, I find that people uh, do often turn to spiritual practice, whether it's they discover yoga or meditation, or they begin to look at spiritual teachers and read and become, more well versed in that sort of thing across the board. Or it can be where you simply love, pondering and in your study and taking long walks in nature, where you begin to write poetry or write your book, or those sorts of things that have a more inward focus. It doesn't mean that you can't be in relationships and have a lot of fun. That's not the point. But the point is that it is a beautiful gift of spiritual growth that is set up for you at the end of um, for the final days and years of your life, if you have the seven as your fourth pinnacle. All right, I hope this makes sense. If you don't know the rest of your pinnacles, please refer down to that description box, take a look at the video, and I hope this has given you a few ahas. So thanks for watching.